resisted, but Jefferson did not give up the chase. And though she kept Jefferson's advances secret, she allowed her anxiety to manifest itself to her husband indirectly. As John Walker recalled, his wife began to object to Jefferson serving as Walker's executor, telling me that she wondered why I could place such confidence in him. Over the next few years, Jefferson kept up his quiet campaign. On a visit of the Walkers to Shadwell, Jefferson renewed his caresses toward Betsy, slipping a note into the cuff of the sleeve of her gown. The letter, John Walker later recalled, was a paper tending to convince her of the innocence of promiscuous love. Perhaps from the hour of his humiliation in the Apollo room with Rebecca Burwell, Jefferson knew he expressed himself better in writing. To write Mrs. Walker and argue love letter, one attempted to change her mind, to convince her it was in character. The ploy failed on this occasion. Mrs. Walker said that she, on the first glance, tore Jefferson's note to pieces. Later, at a house party at the plantation of a mutual friend, John Cole, who was a noted hunter, Jefferson watched for a chance to steal a few moments with Betsy. One evening, when the women retired for the night, Jefferson saw his opportunity. He pretended to be sick, complained of a headache, and left the gentleman among whom I was, John Walker told. Slipping away, Jefferson found Betsy's room, where, her husband said, "My wife is undressing or in bed." Jefferson failed again. He was repulsed with indignation and menaces of alarm. "Ran over," said John Walker. Decades later, Jefferson confirmed the Walker story. It had come to light after a political break between Jefferson and John Walker, who learned in the intervening years of his friend's pursuit of his wife. It had been, Jefferson said, an incorrect thing to do. Frustrated by his failure with Mrs. Walker, Jefferson took solace in a glorious autumn of plays and politics in Williamsburg in 1768. Some years before, the Reverend Samuel Davies, a Presbyterian clergyman, had chastised Virginia for its love of drama, saying, "Plays and romances were more read than the history of the blessed Jesus." Offerings in the Capitol in the spring had included Joseph Addison's Drummer, Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, John Gay's Beggar's Opera, and Thomas Otway's Venice Preserved and The Orphan. Now Jefferson watched performances by William Verling's Virginia Company of Comedians, and of John Holmes's Douglas and Henry Carey's farce The Honest Yorkshireman. Meanwhile, Jefferson was playing the part of patron to the arts, bringing the Italian musician Francis Alberti from Williamsburg to Albemarle. Alberti taught Jefferson on the violin. The With Jefferson Circle lost its most powerful member when Francis Fauquier died at the governor's palace in March 1768. In his will, Fauquier expressed regret that his slaves would have to be sold after his death, and he took the then unusual step of allowing his dozen adult slaves